Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mentoring Moments. I'm here with my man, Ivo, and we're on another one of our one-to-one mentorship sessions. Welcome again, Ivo. And you had some specific questions around B2B personalization, right? So why don't you lay out what your thinking is around this topic, and then we'll dive right in.
Excellent, Jason. Happy to be here again. So much looking forward to our session here. And yes, I brought the topic B2B personalization with me today. And personalization is such important. And in B2B, there is so much potential to personalize the experience for B2B customers. So I specifically want to exclude any gated digital experience because there, I think it's very obvious that we know the customers and that we can personalize what they can do, what they can order, their prices, the products, and so forth. So I would really like to focus on the personalization of the target audience that we don't know. So we do not know the people who are there. We can only, let's say, put them in buckets or, let's say, have an idea who they are when they interact with our content. So, first of all, personalization overall. What is your feeling? How important is personalization nowadays, 2024, in delivering true value for B2B customers and businesses?
This is such an amazing question, and I think that there are some really strong data points that I've spoken to even over the last year or so, but there's other organizations, there's DC360, and there's other research organizations. Forrester has put out a couple of reports. There's some other research organizations that put out some reports over the last year or so that specifically address and discuss the personalization expectations of B2B customers in particular, on specifically as it relates to e-commerce websites. And I think that there is a default expectation now. All the research is showing that there's a default expectation that I will be treated as a unique individual, that I'll be treated as a unique person when I come to shop a website. And this topic, like, I could go on about this personalization topic we could literally talk about this for hours. But what I want to talk about is I primarily want to talk about the buckets or types of personalization that a brand can execute, where they would typically execute that type of personalization, why they would execute that type of personalization, and what ultimately is the benefit to the customer of that type of personalization. So if we're thinking about cool, hopefully that sort of covers the types. So we have website personalization, right? And this typically falls under several different areas of personalization on a website. So as we all know, especially on an e-commerce website, there's a typical structure. There's a basic constant structure that happens on most websites where we have a homepage, we got a category page, we got a product page, we got a cart page, we got a checkout page. Those are the typical structures. Now, we may have some content pages, we may have a blog, we may have some content blocks, we may have some other digital assets that we surface on the website, videos, images. We have some interactive content. We may have quiz commerce, where, you know, if it's a hair product website where we ask a bunch of questions of the user of the website, we gather preference information from the customer or user information from the customer in exchange for trying to help them identify the right product for their needs, etc. But all of this is to say that there are some broad conceptual types of personalization that we can do within this very standardized construct known as an e-commerce website, right? And so there, and these types of personalization have meant that there has been massive M&A activity happening in the personalization space over the last few years. I've witnessed it. I've seen it happening in the market. You can take somebody, first of all, let me lay the groundwork here. There's search, merchandising, right, and personalization. And we have multiple overlays or overlaps in how these different platforms work together and increasingly are folding together into one mega platform to bring a personalized experience across that whole website journey. So we, from the earliest days of enterprise class site search, we've had the concept of personalization. We've had the idea that sellers could merchandise products through that site search experience. So they could boost products in the results, they could bury products in the results, they could elevate products with a certain brand, they could elevate products with a certain margin, they could control the results of specific search queries to make sure that the results are the most relevant for that query possible. And increasingly that's being controlled by AI and by search algorithms now to use the wisdom of the crowd to try to auto boost and bury certain products based on not only relevance to the query, but also based on what the conversion rates are for those products when they put in certain orders on the search results page. So oftentimes there is a combination of AI and human powered merchandising that can happen, whether that be in a merchandising panel where I literally physically drag and drop products. So they would be in a default order for a specific query. As a merchandiser, I can now physically drag and drop those and reorder the results that would normally show. Maybe I only want to reorder the first 5 or 6 or 10 results, and then everything else would fall in its normal order based on a weighting of different attributes of those products as it relates to the query. So usually there are certain attributes. So these search engines will get a product feed from the website, and they will bring in all of the data points that are available around those products. And so we have name, we have SKU, we have description, we have all the different structured product attributes around a product that would normally maybe be displayed in a table on the product page around those products. All of this information is being shunted into these search engines, and then effectively a word cloud is being created around these products using AI and specific algorithms that will surface them based on a weighting. Okay, cool. If a keyword match is found in the title of a product, that is usually going to be weighted higher than if a match is made in the description or in the attributes. Or you can modify the weightings within there so that you can say, okay, if a keyword is matched within an attribute, a structured data attribute, then that is going to be weighted higher, for example, than in an unstructured attribute like a free-form text description of the product, right? So that's the first area where we were always trying to personalize the experience. We're always trying to be as relevant in site search as Google is in web search. That's the ultimate goal, right? So there's always been this automatic personalization combined with manual merchandising, combined with certain campaigns that might be currently being run by that brand, and we want to focus our results to align with those specific campaigns. So that's the first thing. Then you have what's called, so there's search and merchandising. Merchandising will take place across multiple areas of the website, all the way from the menu structure, all the way down to merchandising on category pages. So much like what we have in search results pages, merchandisers now have the ability to merchandise their products on category pages and sometimes even in dynamic menuing. So when we say dynamic menuing, we're saying, okay, from the moment someone hits our website, we need to start modifying how we display the menu structure to make it the most relevant to them as we can make it, right? So some platforms will dynamically display the menu structure in such a way that, especially if they are a known person to us, we can continue to start personalizing based on their purchase history with us. And then there's the final one, merchandising. The final one is personalization. And personalization almost always relates to, when you hear a platform say, we do search, merchandising, and personalization, personalization usually relates to product and or content recommendations, right? And those product and content recommendations usually land on multiple page types. They will land on the home page, they will land on the category page, and they will land on the product page, and sometimes they will land on the cart page, right? And usually that is, again, from the moment that someone hits our website, we're starting to personalize and recommend products based on IP detection. What region do they come from? What do people tend to like? And almost all of this personalization is based on what's called wisdom of the crowd, meaning what do people do in general when they come to our website, when they hit this page or they hit this product or they search for this item or they use this term. What do they typically do next? And what do they typically add to their cart in conjunction with each other? What do they add to a product compare if there's a product compare feature on the website? If they add products to their wish list, what do they do after that? What does that tell us about what they are likely to convert on? If we can look at their order history, so this wisdom of the crowd is very generic in the sense that we don't need to have someone be authenticated to be able to personalize their experience. From the first page that they land on, and oftentimes when someone comes to our website, they're landing on a category page, for example. We know what they're likely to do next and what they're likely to want to do next based on millions of interactions with our website over time and what typically happens next. Okay, cool. Now this starts to modify our thinking. If someone uses the search query red dress, for example, then it's highly likely, and we're a fashion website, it's highly likely that the person who uses the term red dress likes products that are red, for example. If when they're doing their faceting and their filtering within a category, again, if we're a fashion brand and if they use the facet or the filter for a size 10 in dress size, for example, then we have a pretty good idea that they are a size 10, that they're a size 10 user of clothing. And so the algorithm will then start to favorably promote red products, say, for example, in a category, it will automatically boost products that perhaps have the red attribute with them and the size and recommend products that we have a size 10 in stock of and bury products that were out of stock of the size 10 and red, for example. Now, this is all wisdom of the crowd type stuff here. Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening. There is a deeper level of personalization that can happen once someone is authenticated. So some search, merchandising, and personalization platforms only use wisdom of the crowd technology. Some of them only use authenticated information and specific behavioral information of the website visitor once we know who they are, or even when they've arrived at our website, we assign them a specific ID and we continue to personalize uniquely for them based on their user ID. If and when they ever authenticate, we then can combine the information from their profile to that initially assigned user ID so that we know exactly who that person is, not just an ID anymore, so that we can identify every time they come to the site. But now we know literally who they are because they've authenticated, and we've joined those two bits of information together, the unauthenticated behaviors and the authenticated behaviors. And now we have a much more holistic view of exactly who this person is and what their behavior is. And then we can personalize based, once we know who they are, if the personalization platform can personalize based on preference information and demographic information and, say, for example, gender information, etc. There are certain things that these platforms can do once we know who they are. So if we know that they're a 40-year-old male, then, for example, if we're a fashion brand, we're gonna demote female targeted products, female targeted clothing, and we're gonna probably promote male clothing that's appropriate for their age or their preferences. So we have these two broad types of personalization. One is just purely wisdom of the crowd based on behaviors of millions of data points across our entire website. Some is authentication based. We're targeting you as an individual and we're saying, okay, based on your exact behavior, we think these are things you're going to like and your preferences that maybe you've shared with us through Quiz Commerce. We've asked a bunch of questions. You've given us a bunch of information with the express purpose of us personalizing your experience with us and making product recommendations that are the most suitable for you. And some platforms can take all of that into account. They will take into account authenticated behavior and wisdom of the crowd behavior and try to personalize the content as well as the product recommendation journey of that person. So this gets into areas of really deep tech that are available on websites. Sometimes they'll only be able to do personalization of products and menuing structure, and sometimes it also brings into account content recommendations. Again, based on wisdom of the crowd, based on tags associated with a blog article, for example, or content of a blog article, we're now going to recommend information to you that is in alignment with what we think you're going to be interested in, is going to be most helpful to you. So that's one broad bucket of personalization, is this search, merchandising, and personalization on a given e-commerce website. Now, some of these platforms also, especially if they are a personalization platform that is known as and this is where we started to getting into overlaps of technologies. There's a separate bucket of technologies known as CDPs, which is a customer data platform. And some of these customer data platforms that don't necessarily personalize the experience on the website, they will start to personalize everything else. So they will tend to personalize, and sometimes CDPs will share information bi-directionally with these search, merchandising, and personalization platforms. They will gather information about these customers, and they will store them as profile properties. So you can think of a CDP as almost like a supercharged marketing automation platform, because it holds much more rich data, behavioral data around a customer. And once you have that information, then what we do is we can look at cohorts. We can create segments within our customer data platform. We can start creating segments within there of specific customers that have taken specific behavior and that we know certain things about. We know what their purchase history is. We know what their abandoned cart history is. We know what categories they visited. We know all this information about them. Now what we need to start doing is we need to start creating segments that we can communicate with via social media platforms, via paid media platforms, via email, via SMS, if we have their contact details, in a very targeted, personalized way. And that's that second bucket of personalization that I would talk about, is off-site personalization, right? Which is, okay, we now need to personalize every other touch point other than our website when we're communicating with a customer and when we're potentially putting an ad in front of a prospect. We now want to start personalizing that experience too. And we don't want to just batch and blast emails. We don't want to just batch and blast SMSs. We want to try to make sure that is as targeted and relevant as possible for that customer. And so sometimes that takes the form of conditional content. Again, going back to that, if we know we're sending an email to a 40-year-old male and we're a fashion brand, then it's probably not a smart idea to merchandise a whole bunch of female targeted products at them in emails and in SMSs. So if we know this information about them, we now want to personalize the content journey and the product recommendations we're making to them across every touch point, not just on our website, right? Now, we also want to take that information and we want to create what we call lookalike audiences from that cohort of customers that we have, that we know all this information about, and we have this behavioral information on them. And we start to understand, okay, these are the customers that convert. These are the customers we can service at a high level. These are the customers that we have a perfect solution for. Great, fantastic. Then what we want to do is we want to create those cohorts. Instead of telling, for example, Meta, or instead of telling Google, hey, go find me 40-year-old males with this amount of income that like these things, and here's all this information, that we want you to go out and find me cohorts of people like this, and just trust them that they're going to find you the best cohort of customers. No, let's generate a list of email addresses of customers that we know already fit that profile type based on our segmentation and our CDP. Let's send that list of emails to Google, to Meta, right? And say, we want more customers like this, right? You probably know who these people are based on their email address because you have millions and hundreds of millions of email addresses in your system. If you now you can take our list of customers, our cohort of customers that we like the look of for a specific reason because they fall into a specific cohort or specific segment. Now go out and find me more like this. And when you do find people like this, show them this ad or show them this piece of content because we know that it's likely to attract their attention, right? It's targeted specifically at this cohort of lookalike customers. And there's
Just one
other
second
things.
here,
Yeah,
Jason.
you
This
go.
is also, sorry, do you think this is applicable for B2B businesses as well? Those lookalike audiences to target them on platforms like Facebook or not?
I absolutely do. And a lot of B2B brands are actually missing out on this opportunity because humans are humans. And B2B buyers are now starting their supplier search journey online more than ever before. And what that means is when they're going out there and they're saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody that sells widget X, right? I'm now going to go and I'm going to Google search. I'm going to Google search who supplies this thing, right? And that's why I would also recommend that B2B brands open up their catalog instead of making it gated to where you can't see anything on their website until you authenticate, right? Which means that Google can't see anything on your website either. It can't index it. You got no long tail benefit, keyword benefit. So even if you don't want to open it up to selling to guest customers who don't have an account with you, you at least can open up the product catalog to where you don't have to authenticate to see the product catalog, right? To see what's available, to see what we sell, right? Maybe you have to authenticate to see your own unique pricing, to see inventory levels, to be able to actually make a purchase on account, etc. Maybe you have to authenticate to do that. Maybe you already have to have an account, but at least opening up the catalog starts to open up massive opportunities. And it also creates an opportunity for landing pages to send people to from specific ad campaigns that you're running as a supplier. So absolutely, I think it applies to B2B.
Very interesting, very interesting. And also how you laid it out, really great. And I have a follow-up question here, Jason. Based on what you said, do you believe there is a certain maturity order or like a maturity level a business has to have before it engages in personalization? Or to be even more specific, should a business have the capability of e-commerce first, so that level of maturity first before engaging into personalization or not? And if not, how would you then convert your personalization? What would then be the impact of your personalization?
Yeah, I think there's probably two answers to this. One is before you start doing website personalization, you got to be doing, you got to have the basics. It's a crawl, walk, run scenario, right? And so most B2B brands still don't do e-commerce at all. They don't do e-commerce. And so
Right.
they still have field sales reps. They do all sales manually through a sales team. I would say before you want to start really heavily investing in website personalization, experience personalization, you need to have that minimum foundation of e-commerce capability. And if you don't have that, it's probably not as valuable to start doing what you can do website personalization on CMS websites, but it's not nearly as effective as it is on an e-commerce website where we're trying to help somebody find the exact perfect product for them in that moment, right? And so I think you have to have a minimum level of maturity with e-commerce, just the foundations of it, just being able to sell online, being able to show somebody the right products in terms of what catalogs do they have access to, what is their pricing, what is their MOQs, all those things that we would expect to have in B2B. You have to be able to do that first, right? Before you can layer on these very high performance personalization techniques on site, right? When it comes to personalization of advertising and marketing, I would say, no, you don't. You can start doing that straight away. Somebody with a relatively basic marketing automation platform can start to personalize the marketing journey really well, and especially if they've got a CDP, and especially if they're starting to plumb in some of the unique data points that B2B sellers have around their customers that B2C and D2C brands don't have. Now we can start customizing that content journey as it relates to communications, and we can start personalizing the ad campaign journey. We're going out and we're trying to find new B2B customers. absolutely that personalization can start happening yesterday.
All right. Because I'm asking these questions to understand when I talk to businesses, I first need to understand their maturity level, right? And what potential would it have to use my software? So what you're saying basically is if a business, given a business has a list of emails already, so customers they have been in touch with, then they could then use them on Facebook for lookalike audiences and target them specifically with a certain campaign. Now the question is how to close the loop, right? And offer the customers a possibility to order the product that they are advertising. That would then basically work, correct?
100%. And let's dive into this in more detail on our next session together. If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.